Hello, today is Sunday, June 30th, and welcome back to Down the Fleece Hole. Welcome to any new viewers, and welcome back any returning viewers. My name is Barb, and I am your host. So, the pictures that you saw at the beginning, those were some things that I took during last week on Friday. Our spinning guild had an opportunity to do a demonstration out in a local town nearby during their festival that they had. They did a craft show and had people who were selling homemade crafts and different items, and we were given the opportunity to demonstrate spinning for the public. It was a really neat opportunity. We had a lot of people who stopped and asked questions, a lot of kids who were interested, especially the little boys, which I have found to be very much so, especially when I've taken my spinning out in public to the coffee house, or I've been to restaurants before with some of my spindles, and it seems like it's the little boys that always seem to have the questions that they ask, and that they're always curious about what are you doing, how does that work. So it's interesting the questions that can be brought up while you're actually spinning or even knitting in public. So hopefully you enjoyed those pictures. It was a beautiful day that day. We've had a lot of rain here in the area, and we were very fortunate. It was blue skies, just puffy clouds. Temperatures were very comfortable. It was warm, but it wasn't too warm, and it wasn't very humid at all. However, this week, summer has finally come, and we've gone from kind of cool, damp, wet temperatures to temperatures above 80 with high humidity. So trying to keep cool has been a bit difficult to do lately. I ended up going and I've worked on some knitting over the last couple of weeks, and I showed last week my harvest cardigan that I had been working on, and I actually finally finished that yesterday, and it came out really nice. I really like this, and I'm going to look forward to actually getting to wear it during the fall and the winter. And I will post some pictures of it so that you can actually see. I made it a little longer in the body than what was in the directions, and I actually modified my sleeves and I made them a little bit shorter. If you look at the pictures, the pattern is by Tin Can Knits, and the pictures that they have, the sleeve actually comes down to the knuckles on the hand. And I decided I really didn't want my sleeves to be that long, and so I made it so that my sleeves just come below the wrist, and that way when I move around in it, it won't go up too far, but it's not covering my hand. And I ended up going, and while I was knitting this, I was doing my cuffs on my sleeves, and it uses a garter edge. And while I was doing my garter edge, I ended up making a mistake, and I ended up knitting 2 rows instead of knitting 1 and then purling 1. See if I can hold this. Yes, there we go. So I made that mistake, and then as I got up a little further, I noticed it. And I thought that actually made a really neat little feature, and that a little additional design to the cuff, so that it wasn't plain. So I ended up repeating it again a little further up and kept track of where I did these at. And then I went ahead and I did that on the other cuff. So it's not a real, it's what I would consider to be kind of a more subtle kind of design feature to it, and not something maybe you'd notice from too far of a distance. But when you get close up, you can actually see it, and it just adds a little bit of variation to the design and to the sleeve. The other thing I did was I had read some notes on some project pages that people did, and some people had mentioned that they had issues with the cuff area flaring out, and so they had made it shorter. So when I did my cuff, what I decided to do was I ended up doing some decreases in it. And you might be able to see it a little bit where it kind of tapers to the edge here. And it makes it a little bit more fitted at the wrist. And it keeps it from going and flaring out and from just being too bulky. And I really liked how that worked. I'm going to be posting some pictures on over the talking here and that, so that you can actually see the cardigan actually in its full, and that it's a little difficult to show on the camera. And it's a pattern that if somebody was wanting to knit a sweater for the first time, I would suggest this pattern. It was very easy. Most of the techniques that are used in it are things that most people are able to do, and that pretty much it's knit and purl. There's some make ones when you do the raglan sleeve, and picking up some stitches underneath along with that at the neck. When you do the neck itself, you pick up stitches along the edges. But other than that, it was very easy, very beginner friendly, and it would be something I would recommend for somebody who was looking for a first time sweater pattern to be able to do. And that is all I've actually finished over the last 2 weeks. And that I ended up starting a new sweater, and that which I will show you guys. And unfortunately, this past 2 weeks, I didn't have any time to actually continue doing any more work on the edging for my Vampire Wine Shell by M. Mario. And so I'm going to be working on that and hopefully get some of that done and finally get that off the needles, hopefully sometime soon. So as I mentioned, I did start another sweater pattern. And this one I found on Ravelry. It's by a designer from Finland. And her name is Meiju, M-E-I-J-U, K-P. And the pattern name is called the Olive Tree. And this is a very nice sweater. It's knitted in a lightweight, fingering weight yarn. It has a lace panel on the back, and it uses some shoulder shaping that she mentions is developed by Susie M. on Ravelry. And so here's a picture of the shawl, or of the sweater. And it's just a very nice, simple sweater. And I started knitting on that. And so far I've found it to actually be very easy to do. It's a one piece, a top down. It uses short rows and also some of the make one and the make one right and make one left. Along with that, when you're working on the opposite side, when you turn the work, you end up doing a make one purl left and make one purl right. And so that can be a little bit confusing. You have to really pay some close attention to what you're doing at each marker. But other than that, it wasn't too difficult. The other technique that it used that was new to me, and I actually had to look up to see how to do it, was it used a it used a tubular cast on. And so let me take this out and I will show you what it looks like. I've gotten to the point where I'm actually doing my sleeve increases now. And the tubular cast on, what it does is, instead of doing a traditional long tail cast on, you do basically a double knit. And it creates a very stretchy cast on. And this was done in a one by one rib. And let's see here. There we go. And so when you do the tubular cast on, it actually, what happens is your edges end up curling over the edge of the fabric. And so you don't have that really harsh cast on edge, and it makes it for a very nice look to a cuff or to a neckline. It can be used on a hat, and it's a little tricky, but definitely I decided it was worth learning, and when I learned it, I was very happy with the results that it gave me. I ended up going to YouTube to find how to do the tubular cast on, and I looked at a few different videos. Some of them were kind of confusing, and even with the one I used, I had to make notes actually on a notebook to know what exactly to do to keep it straight until I got more used to what I was doing. The person who I ended up using on YouTube that I found was the easiest to follow on their explanation was While They Play. On her channel, she has a YouTube video available for the tubular cast on, and it shows it in the 1x1 rib and also the modification for doing a 2x2 rib if you wanted to use it in a 2x2. Let's see here. My thoughts on this pattern is that it is actually, I feel like it's very well written out. It's easy to follow, even with the new techniques, and the lace, it's not that difficult. With my lace, I ended up adding in extra stitch markers, and that I did my stitch markers, which are right here for my shoulders. So there's that one there, and there's that one, and then this is the back here. And of course with lace it's kind of difficult to see until you block it out, but what it does is it goes and it makes kind of this leaf shape on the back, and that, which is very, very nice. And what I did was, there are areas where you do purl stitches. You do purl stitches at the beginning before you go and you do your lace, and you do 2 purls again at the back here. And then there's an area where you do a purl in the middle, and then you do, it's a repeat, you do the lace pattern twice on the back, and you do another 2 purls. When I first started it, I ended up having to tear it back because it got confusing of where my purls were, especially when I was working on the wrong side, and that trying with the small stitches, trying to really see what was a purl, what was a knit. And I decided, instead of going and trying to remember where exactly they were, trying to really differentiate between the stitches, that I would go ahead and I would just put in markers before and after my purl stitches, which really helped. And along with that, what it does is that when you're working that lace pattern, it breaks it down into sections. And so if you ended up missing a yarn over, or you missed a decrease, or you did an extra decrease and your stitch count is wrong, you know exactly where it's wrong at. You know what section of that lace pattern you made that mistake. If it's a yarn over, it's real easy then to just go ahead and pick up your yarn over and continue on. If it's a decrease, then unfortunately, you can try to see if you can figure a way to make it work. But you more than likely are looking at, having to tear it back, unless you decide you want to just leave it. Although with lace, whenever you do make a mistake, it can really throw off the way the pattern looks. So far this has been really easy to do. I'm to the point now, again, like I said, I'm doing my shoulder, I'm doing my arm shaping, and that I did the shoulders, and I'm now doing my sleeve, right here, and that, so my increases are going in between the markers instead of on the outside. And I casted this on, I restarted it again on Wednesday, and since then I've been able to knit quite a bit on it. So I'm hoping this one is not going to take me as long as it did on my previous, on the Harvest cardigan. That took me just a little over 3 months, but I did have a lot of times in which it was sitting and I didn't do much with it. And I'm hoping I have this one at least ready so that by the time we start getting cool weather again here in Michigan, I'll be able to wear this and enjoy it. The yarn I'm using is Knit Picks, and this is their palette yarn, which they sell. It's available in a fingering weight, and they sell it specifically for people who are wanting to do a lot of color work. It's a very inexpensive choice in that, but even with it being inexpensive, I feel like it's actually a very nice quality yarn. It's not as soft as maybe like your merino or your cashmere or some of your other yarns, but the feel to me is not too bad. If you're really sensitive, you might find that having this right up against your skin, especially around your neck or other areas where you might have real sensitive skin, it may be a little too rough. But you know, if you don't have issues too much with too much of the itch factor when it comes to wool, this is a very nice choice to be able to use. And the color that I'm using is the Verdant Heather, and I actually got it when they did their St. Patrick's Day sale. So I was able to actually get it for a little bit cheaper than what they sell it for, so it's always a score, you know, when you're buying a sweater quantity of yarn, to be able to make something without having to spend a whole lot of money and still have something that's a nice quality and to have that control. It's very nice to be able to do that. Okay, so as I mentioned on my last podcast, we have Tour de Fleece that's coming up, and I'm starting to think a little bit about exactly what it is that I want to do for my spinning during the Tour de Fleece. If you're not familiar with it, Tour de Fleece is a time in which people in the spinning community participate in spinning on their wheels as the bikers who are in France are going and are doing the Tour de France. And it started up. If you look on the web, you can actually find some information about how it started. There was a lady who was very interested in the Tour de France and enjoyed watching it, and she decided to go and to have herself and a small group of people go, and during the time in which the bikers were doing the Tour de France, to actually to spin along with them. And the next year there was a larger group of people that joined, and it increased to a point in which it has become a worldwide event that people from everywhere participate in. Mostly it happens on Ravelry, although there are some groups on Facebook that also go and do the Tour de France or Tour de Fleece. And even though they're not an official Ravelry group, they still have their own fun with doing it. And depending on the group, one I'm in on the Spinner's Playground, and that there's actually prizes available and that have been donated from different members. And with the prizes, there's different categories, and it's all for fun in that, but you know, everyone likes, you know, that chance to be able to maybe win something. And so with the Tour de Fleece, I've been thinking about what it is that I wanted to spin, and I was looking at some fiber, and I found some stuff that I decided I want to spin up for a sweater, and I ended up getting it. And I picked up two different types of braids, and that they're both in the same colorway. This one here, this is a 50% merino and 50% tencel, and this is by Greenwood, and you can find her on Etsy, and the colorway is called Outlaw, and it's just very pretty. It's got some rust color in it, some browns, it's got some greens, teal, blues, and that. I don't know if you would say really teal. And of course the color does not come across well on the camera. But I saw this on her webpage and I just really liked the way the color looked. And I thought that would actually make a beautiful sweater. So this is the merino tencel. And then I also got, it's a merino, silk, and bamboo mixture. And it's 50% merino, 25% bamboo, and 25% silk. And this is also in her Outlaw colorway. And she has this colorway. It's available on several different bases in her shop. It was also available on a BFL. And I believe it may have been just also available on a straight up merino base. But this, I think, is going to really make a beautiful sweater that is going to be very nice to wear during the fall and the winter. And it should be very soft, just kind of luxurious. And I've also been thinking of how I want to spin the fiber. Because of the fact that it's hand painted, along with that, it is it's done in sections of color. I don't want my sweater to be in stripes. And so what I'm going to do is, I had seen on YouTube, I had watched one of the videos, and I can't remember who it was. But this lady, what she did was she actually used it for going and taking single braids of fiber that she had available, and had coordinating colors. You know, she did like blues and purples, or blues and greens. Had similar colorway. And what she did was she went and she actually broke the braids up and that into pieces, and had them in each pile. And then what she did is she actually went and she just grabbed each, grabbed one by one, different ones, and mixed it up, is basically. And she put it into her bag that she would use to go and to spin out of. And the idea was, you go and you just grab a section of fiber. You don't look to see what it is that you're grabbing. You don't think about, okay, well, I just did this, so now I use this instead. It just a random grab. And what it does is it creates this very nice marled type of yarn, and that you have just the different colors that are mixed in. It looks like it goes together. It does not look funny. It doesn't look, odd, like you used several different, different braids of yarn. And it helps to kind of pull things together. And so that's, I think, what I'm going to be doing when I actually spin this, is I'm going to go and I'm going to take these braids, even though they're their same colorway, because I want to get those colors mixed up. I'm going to break them down, and that I'm going to tear it apart into smaller sections. And then I'm just going to do random, just random grabs as I spin. And hopefully I'll get something that's going to work out well, that I'll be happy with. So that actually kind of brings us into our acquisitions. And so that fiber was one of my recent acquisitions, and for now I'll end up, having to kind of wait off on, doing, too much more. And then I also ended up, from the same fiber artist, I got a braid that was in a teal color. And this is a BFL. I believe it's just, yes, it is 100% BFL. And this is a heathered, it's supposed to create like a heathered look yarn. And this I was thinking of doing maybe up for some socks, or doing as some fingerless gloves, and that something along those lines. That, or I might save this and I might use it with something else. But I saw that and I really liked the way it looked, and enjoyed the colors. And also, while I was at the Red Cedar Jubilee, I did get a chance to go around to some of the other booths, and I came across a lady who was selling handmade tote bags out of fabric. And the size of them, I thought, was just perfect for being able to use for knitting projects. And her prices were very reasonable, $10 a bag, which I thought was just very nice. It's hard to sometimes, find something that's not super expensive. And so this is the first one that I got, and she did kind of a quilted top with some different fabrics on it. And then it has got, basically this is kind of like a fabric you'd use like for upholstery. And then she also lined it. And it's been quilt stitched together. And then the lining. I don't know if you guys can see that very well or not. So this one is actually carrying my olive tree sweater in it right now. And I might have to switch to a bigger bag as I get further along with the sweater. But for now, it actually holds it very well. And it's just nice. It's easy to carry around. It's easy to grab and take with me when I go to work, and to keep in the car, so that when I'm on my breaks, I can go ahead and I can do a little bit of knitting at work. And the other bag I got, this one was a little bit larger, and it's got coffee on it, which I love coffee, and that I also drink tea, but coffee is one of my first choices. And then the rest of it is in a denim. And this is actually, let's see if I can get there we go. This is actually a very nice sized bag. This is a little bit larger than the other one. And I was able to actually keep my Harvest cardigan sweater in it. And it was kind of a little bit stuffed in, but it fit well, and I was able to carry that with me while I was working on it. So I guess that is it for now. If you like, please subscribe to this channel. Like and comment below any questions you might have, anything anything you're working on. There's also a Ravelry group down the fleece hole for this podcast, and I would love to see what you guys are working on in that, or any comments, or any questions that you might have of anything that I've shown. The show notes will be available there. Along with that, the show notes will be available in the description here on YouTube. And I can be found also on Instagram as Handknits by Barb. On Ravelry, I'm HandknitsBH. So if you're in the United States, have a happy and safe 4th of July. And everyone else and everyone here, just have a nice 2 weeks, and I will see you when I return. Thank you. Bye.